Dejected Omega slipped a note to the Alpha King. Your Luna set a trap. Leave now. From the high cliffs, the royal castle appeared to float, a palace of black stone and silver spires, while deep forests surrounded it, whispering secrets older than any crown. It was a land of power, magic, and hidden dangers. In one of these shadowed forests, a figure moved silently between the trees. Lyra, a young Omega once overlooked by everyone, stepped lightly over twisted roots, her eyes fixed on the distant glow of the castle. She was small, slight, and unremarkable to those who judged by appearances alone, but her mind was sharp, her senses alive to every hidden danger. She had been rejected by the court, dismissed as a mere observer of the world's currents. Yet tonight, she held knowledge that could change the fate of the kingdom. Inside the castle, the grand ball had begun. Courtiers in shimmering robes moved through the hall, masks hiding their expressions, while music echoed beneath crystal chandeliers. The Alpha King, Kale, stood near the center of the room, a figure of dark authority. His presence commanded attention without effort. Tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes like storm clouds that could both comfort and terrify. He was the ruler of Vaelthar, feared and admired in equal measure. Beside him, his Luna, Selene, moved like a shadow through the crowd. Her beauty was legendary, but so was the subtle aura of control that clung to her. Some whispered that she could bend the hearts of men without them noticing. Lyra's eyes followed them both. She had no claim to the throne, no power to sway the court, but she had seen too much. She had observed the small, invisible threads Selene pulled, the ways she whispered into the ears of advisors, planting seeds of doubt and fear. Selene had no love for the king beyond her own ambition, and Lyra knew the danger that waited in every calculated smile and flattering word. Lyra had only one chance. The corridors leading to the grand hall were crowded with dancers and lords, but she had spent years learning to move unseen. Her heart beat rapidly, not from fear but from the urgency of the message she carried. Kale, the Alpha King, must know. His Luna was plotting against him. When the opportunity came, she slipped through the throng and reached the balcony overlooking the hall. There, with trembling hands, she wrote her warning on a small piece of parchment. Your Luna set a trap. Leave now. She pressed the note into the folds of her cloak and waited. The ball raged on below, oblivious to the danger threading through the castle. Kale was observing the guests, noting alliances and rivalries when a faint shadow brushed along the balcony. His eyes narrowed. Most intruders would not dare approach him, but this one moved with a strange purpose. Lyra's gaze met his for a moment, full of urgency, and he felt a curious pull he could not explain. Before anyone else noticed, she vanished into the shadows. Only Kale knew she had been there. And when he later discovered the small note tucked into his cloak, he felt a jolt of shock, suspicion, and something more, curiosity. Who was this Omega, bold enough to approach the Alpha King? And why did her warning feel so true, so necessary? Meanwhile, Selene watched him from across the hall. Her smile was serene, flawless, but her eyes held a glimmer of something dangerous. She sensed the note, even if she did not yet know its words. She knew that Kale had always been proud, unyielding, and untrusting, yet she saw in his glance a flicker of uncertainty. That uncertainty, she understood, could be turned into weakness. Kale did not read the note immediately. Instead, he stood at the balcony, staring at the stars and moon that barely penetrated Vaelthar's eternal twilight. Lyra's warning echoed in his mind. He had always trusted his instincts, his senses sharpened by years of leadership and battle. And now they screamed that danger was closer than he realized, that someone was trying to bind him, not with chains but with subtle magic and manipulation. He slipped away from the crowd, moving to a quiet chamber where he could read the note alone. His fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the shock of being warned by someone he had never truly noticed. The words were simple, yet heavy with implication. Your Luna set a trap. Leave now. Kale's eyes narrowed. Seleni's presence was powerful, yes, but he had never imagined her cunning stretched to betrayal. He felt a strange mix of anger and disbelief. The court, the advisors, the endless ceremonies, they all faded in importance beside this warning. Lyra, the Omega who had been rejected and ignored, had seen through the glittering mask and perceived the threat clearly. For hours, Kale wrestled with the truth. The music, the laughter, the clinking of glasses from the ball below, they became background noise to the storm of thought raging in his mind. Could he trust Lyra? Could he act without exposing his suspicion? If Selene truly had plotted against him, he could not allow it to succeed. Not for his kingdom, not for himself. The tension built as Kale pondered his next move. He could confront Selene, but doing so in public would reveal both suspicion and fear. He could leave the castle, but that might confirm his vulnerability. And yet, the longer he waited, the more dangerous the trap became. Lyra's warning was not just a message, it was a lifeline. Lyra, hiding in the shadowed corridors, felt a mixture of hope and dread. She had risked everything to deliver the note, and now she could only wait. She had been rejected before, dismissed as irrelevant, but tonight she had acted. For once, her voice mattered, even if only a little. As the night deepened, Kale finally made his decision. He would not confront the court blindly, nor would he ignore the warning. Instead, he would seek the truth in the hidden corners of the castle, where shadows could not lie and where secrets often lingered longer than the living. He slipped quietly into the corridors, moving with the precision of a predator. Each step brought him closer to the danger Lyra had sensed, and closer to the Omega who had dared to defy both the court and the Alpha King himself. The moon hung low, a pale guardian over Vaelthar, casting silver light through the narrow windows. Kale paused for a moment, reading the note again. The words burned in his mind. Your Luna set a trap. Leave now. Trust was difficult for a king. He had learned that every smile might hide a dagger, every word a poison. And yet, in that moment, he felt a strange pull toward the one who had warned him, a mixture of admiration, curiosity, and something unspoken that he could not yet name. In the hall below, Selene moved among the guests, her smile unwavering. She did not yet know that her plan had been noticed, that a single Omega had seen through the layers of deception. Her magic was subtle, her control near absolute, but the smallest element of unpredictability, a lone voice, a quiet warning, was enough to unsettle even the strongest Alpha. Kale reached a quiet balcony overlooking the castle gardens. The air was cool, scented with night-blooming flowers. He allowed himself a moment to breathe, to consider the possibilities. The note, the warning, the Omega who had delivered it, these were threads in a web of intrigue he could not ignore. He would follow them, even if it meant walking alone into the darkness, where traps and treachery waited. From her hiding place, Lyra watched him. She had done what she could, but the rest was beyond her control. The Alpha King was acting on her warning, moving toward truths she had glimpsed but could not yet fully reveal. She felt both fear and a strange exhilaration. For once, she mattered. And as Kale stood on the balcony, gazing at the shadowed gardens below, a single thought echoed through his mind. Trust, even when earned in the quietest of ways, could be more dangerous than any spell or trap. But danger was coming, and Kale knew it. The Luna's smile might hide poison, but the night itself whispered of secrets, and the shadows of Vaelthar waited patiently for the king to make his first move. Tonight, nothing would be simple, and for Lyra, the rejected Omega, the real test was only beginning. As the wind stirred through the castle towers, Kale tucked the note into his cloak, and for the first time, he wondered if the smallest voice could change the course of a kingdom. And somewhere in the shadows, Selene's eyes glinted with awareness, a promise that the night had more secrets yet to reveal. The castle of Vaelthar lay in uneasy quiet the morning after the grand ball. Outside, the forest stirred with the whisper of leaves and the faint rustle of creatures unseen. Inside, the halls were full of servants and courtiers, their voices carefully polite, yet under each word lingered suspicion and fear. The note Cale had received the previous night weighed heavily in his pocket, its presence both a warning and a challenge he could not ignore. Cale moved through the corridors with measured steps, each echo a reminder that he was never alone. The castle was a maze of shadows and silence, of whispered alliances and hidden threats. Every servant could be listening, every advisor could be hiding something. He had ruled Vaelthar for years, yet the feeling of danger gnawed at him in a way no battle ever had. Lyra watched him from the shadows, as she had all night. She had not expected her warning to be received so seriously, nor had she imagined Cale's keen instincts would make him move so quickly, quietly. She felt a strange mixture of relief and worry. She had delivered the note, but now the real test began. Would he trust her guidance, or dismiss her again as a mere omega? Cale entered a private chamber, the only light coming from narrow windows that framed the twilight sky. He read the note again carefully, feeling the weight of each word. "Your Luna set a trap. Leave now." The simplicity of the message belied its gravity. Cale's mind, trained to notice deception in every glance and word, immediately considered the possibilities. Seleni's influence was subtle, a slow weaving of control over the minds of the court. To underestimate her would be fatal. And yet, the warning came from Lyra, a young Omega who had no place in courtly intrigue, no reason to intervene but insight and courage. His thoughts turned to her. She had been rejected, overlooked, dismissed, but she had risked herself to deliver this message. That alone made her remarkable, but Cale had learned over the years that unusual bravery often hid more than it revealed. He could not ignore the potential for trickery, yet he could not ignore the truth either. He made a decision. First, he would observe. He would watch Selene closely, study the actions of his court, and discern the nature of the danger before him. And if necessary, he would act decisively. Lyra, moving silently through the servants' corridors, kept close watch on him. She had hoped he would heed her warning, but now she needed to ensure that her guidance reached him when he required it most. She had no magic strong enough to confront Selene directly, but her knowledge of the castle, its secret passages, and hidden rooms gave her an advantage. The first sign of trouble came as Cale entered the library. The room was quiet, lined with shelves of ancient books and scrolls. Advisors often gathered here, seeking knowledge and counsel, but today the library was empty. Cale's trained eyes, however, noticed subtle signs. A parchment slightly moved from its usual place, the faint scent of an unfamiliar oil on the floor. Selene had been here. She had left something behind, a mark of her presence, a reminder of her reach. Lyra appeared then, stepping from the shadow of a doorway. Cale did not startle, instead he studied her. "You came," he said, his voice low but firm. "Why?" Lyra bowed her head slightly. "Because the Luna is not as she appears. She is clever, yes, but dangerous. I have watched her for months, and I know what she plans. You must be cautious." Cale considered her words carefully. Trust did not come easily to him. Years of ruling a kingdom where betrayal was as common as the wind had taught him that. Yet there was something in Lyra's eyes, a certainty born of observation rather than fear, that commanded attention. "I will hear everything," he said finally. "Speak and speak clearly." Lyra took a deep breath and began. She told him of Selene's subtle manipulations, the advisors she had whispered to, the ways she had sown doubt and fear among those who served the throne. She spoke of ancient magics, charms woven into objects, and illusions that could twist perception. Every detail was precise, every warning deliberate. Cale listened, absorbing each word, weighing every possibility. The more she spoke, the more he realized the danger was greater than he had imagined. Selene was not merely ambitious, She was patient, cunning, and skilled in ways that could threaten both him and the kingdom. "You have been rejected," he said slowly, "ignored by the court, yet you saw this." "Why?" Lyra's eyes met his. "Because I watch, I learn. I have no claim, no allegiance except to truth and to the safety of the kingdom. That is why I spoke." Kale nodded, a silent acknowledgement of her courage. He had long believed strength came from power and command, yet here was an Omega, overlooked and dismissed, showing him that insight and courage mattered just as much as swords and armies. "Very well," he said finally. "We act carefully. First, we observe. Then, if necessary, we strike." Together, they moved through the castle, Lyra guiding him through secret passages and hidden corridors. Kale saw the castle with new eyes, noticing doors that led nowhere, chambers that concealed secrets, and shadows that seemed to watch their every step. Lyra whispered warnings of guards who were under subtle enchantments, of rooms where illusions could trick even the most wary. As they moved, Kale began to understand the depth of her knowledge. She knew the castle as he knew the battlefield, anticipating danger before it arrived. And slowly, he began to trust her, though the trust was fragile and tested with every step. Their alliance grew quietly but strongly. Kale found himself drawn to her courage, her intelligence, and the honesty in her eyes. Lyra, in turn, could not deny the stirrings of admiration and respect she felt for the Alpha King. He was proud and commanding, yet willing to listen, willing to consider what others overlooked. Their connection was subtle, a tension that grew with each shared glance, each whispered word in the shadowed halls. Hours passed in careful investigation. They discovered the first tangible sign of Seleni's plot, a small amulet, its center glowing faintly with magic. Lyra recognized it immediately from the old text she had studied. "It binds perception," she explained. "It can make someone see what they are not meant to see or hide what is real." Kale studied the amulet, turning it in his hand. "She would use this to control someone," he murmured. "Perhaps an advisor, perhaps even me." "Yes," Lyra said softly, "you must be careful. The Luna's traps are subtle. They are not obvious until it is too late." The realization settled over him like a storm cloud. He had faced armies, rebellion, and treachery before, but the subtlety of magic that manipulated trust and perception was something entirely different. And yet, for the first time, he did not feel completely alone. Lyra's presence, her guidance, gave him a new sense of clarity and determination. As the day drew to a close, Kale and Lyra reached a quiet terrace overlooking the forests beyond the castle. The sun, faint and weak, cast long shadows and the twilight returned with a gentle hush. Kale held the amulet carefully, considering their next move. "Selene will act tonight," Lyra said, her voice calm but urgent. "She always waits for the perfect moment. We must be ready." Kale nodded. "Then we prepare. We observe, we anticipate, and we do not act rashly." He looked at her, really looked, for the first time outside the formalities of court. "You were brave to warn me." Lyra felt heat rise to her cheeks but kept her composure. "I could not stand by and do nothing." They were silent for a moment, watching the forest sway in the twilight wind. There was tension between them, quiet but palpable, like the first spark before a fire ignites. Neither spoke of it, yet both felt it. The evening came, and with it, the return of the grand ball's echoes. Courtiers gathered again, laughter and music filling the halls, but Kale and Lyra moved through the shadows unseen, preparing, watching, ready. Every glance, every smile from Selene was now a test, a challenge to their wits and courage. Kale held the amulet tightly, feeling the weight of responsibility and the stirrings of trust he had not felt in years. Lyra moved beside him, quiet and steady, a small figure carrying the burden of knowledge and courage. Together, they would face what was coming, aware that danger could strike at any moment. And somewhere, hidden among the glittering guests, Selene's eyes glimmered with awareness. She sensed the shift, the change in Kale's demeanor, the subtle alliance that had formed with the Omega she had ignored. Her smile remained perfect, but the threat of discovery touched the edges of her control. The night would not pass quietly. Shadows would move, secrets would be revealed, and trust would be tested. Kale and Lyra were ready to step into the hidden world of deception and power, where every choice mattered, and the smallest voice could change the fate of a kingdom. As the moon rose high, its pale light glinting on the castle towers, Kale whispered to Lyra, almost to himself, "The Luna is clever, but together we may be cleverer." Lyra's eyes met his, steady and determined. "We must be, for the kingdom, for you, for everything that could be lost." And in that quiet, tense moment, a bond was formed, not yet of love, but of trust, respect, and the knowledge that only together could they face the danger that lurked in Vaelthar's shadows. The night stretched on, and the first trap began to reveal itself, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the moment Kale and Lyra would finally see its true danger. The night had deepened into a heavy silence over the kingdom of Vaelthar. Within the castle, shadows stretched long across marble floors, curling around the high columns like living things. The air smelled faintly of night-blooming flowers, and the distant howl of wolves echoed through the forest beyond. Kale moved carefully through the quiet halls, the amulet that Lyra had found clutched in his hand. Its faint glow reminded him that the danger Selene posed was not yet ended. Lyra followed close behind, her footsteps soundless, her mind alert to every hidden corner, every whisper of movement. She had led Kale through secret passages, corridors unknown to most, but even she felt the weight of anticipation pressing down. The castle was alive with unseen eyes and silent magic. Selene was clever, but Kale was determined, and together they had become a force even she had not expected. They reached the grand hall, now empty except for the faint echo of music from earlier. The chandeliers above flickered as if sensing the tension in the room. Kale paused, listening, sensing the subtle threads of manipulation that Selene had woven. His instincts told him something was near, something unseen, ready to strike. "Be ready," Lyra whispered, her voice low yet steady. "The Luna will act soon. She does not rush. She waits for the perfect moment to make you doubt yourself." Kale nodded. "I am ready." Yet inside he felt the unease that came when magic intertwined with human ambition. Selene's plots were subtle, dangerous, and designed to twist perception. One wrong move, one misread glance, and the trap could spring. As they moved toward the center of the hall, a soft glow began to emerge from the corners of the room. At first it seemed like a trick of light, a reflection from the chandeliers, but Kale recognized the energy immediately, Selene's magic. The room shimmered, and the edges of reality began to blur. Chairs appeared where none should have been, tapestries shifted in the shadows, and whispers of voices that were not there floated through the air. Lyra's hand tightened slightly on his sleeve. "It's starting," she murmured. "We must focus. Do not let your mind wander." "She wants confusion, doubt, fear. Stay grounded." Kale drew a deep breath, centering himself. "I trust you, Lyra. Lead me through this." Together they moved carefully, each step deliberate. Selene's illusions tried to trick them. Corridors that led nowhere, doors that vanished when approached. But Lyra's knowledge of the castle and Kale's instincts kept them moving forward. They reached a small chamber tucked behind a false wall, a place where Selene could not easily follow. Here they paused. Kale studied the amulet again. Its glow pulsed faintly, a heartbeat of hidden power. "This is how she manipulates," he said quietly. "She binds perception, making the mind see only what she wants. Anyone caught unprepared could be lost." Lyra nodded. "Exactly. And tonight she plans to use it against you directly. Her goal is to make you doubt everything you know, your advisors, the kingdom, even yourself. We must be stronger than the illusions." Kale's jaw tightened. He had faced enemies before, yet this felt different. This was not a battle of strength or swords. It was a battle of minds, perception, and courage. And he was not alone. Lyra, the Omega who had once been dismissed, now stood beside him as equal, guiding him through the darkness. The chamber door creaked behind them, soft but deliberate. Cale's senses tensed, and he turned to see a figure materialize in the shadows. Selene stepped forward, her smile serene, her eyes calculating. She wore the elegance of a queen, but the power in her presence pressed on the edges of the mind like an invisible weight. "Alpha King," she said, her voice smooth, melodic, yet carrying an undertone of command. "I see you've discovered my little arrangement." Cale did not respond immediately. He held the amulet firmly, focusing on his own senses, ignoring the flicker of doubt that her presence tried to plant. "You underestimated me," he said finally, his voice calm but firm. "And now you will find that strength comes not only from control but from loyalty and courage, and I have found both in unexpected places." Selene's eyes narrowed slightly. She had expected him to falter, to be ensnared by fear and confusion. Yet here he was steady, his gaze unwavering, and beside him Lyra stood tall, unafraid, her resolve as clear as the steel of a sword. "You rely on her," Selene said softly, glancing at Lyra. "An Omega, daring to think she can guide an Alpha." Cale's eyes flashed. "She sees truth, she warns me of danger, and unlike some, she acts." Lyra felt a flicker of heat at his words, a mixture of pride and nervous anticipation. She had expected no praise, no recognition. Yet in Cale's acknowledgement she felt something rare, trust, respect, and the beginnings of something more. Selene's lips curved in a smile, faint and knowing. "Very well," she said. "If it is a test you desire, then so be it." With a subtle movement she raised her hand and the chamber shifted. Walls seemed to stretch, shadows thickened, and illusions became solid. The air grew heavier, as if charged with magic. Objects moved with a life of their own, chairs and tables shifting unpredictably. The whispers of voices grew louder, echoing thoughts that were not one's own. Cale's heart pounded, yet he focused on Lyra's guidance. "Remember," she whispered, "focus on what you know is real, ignore the rest." Step by step, Cale moved through the illusions, each one testing his perception, each one designed to break his confidence. But Lyra's presence, her calm instructions, gave him clarity. He could see through the falsehoods, recognize the patterns, and resist the pull of Selene's manipulation. Selene's expression remained composed, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of surprise. She had not anticipated Cale's steadfastness, nor the Omega's unwavering support. Her trap was designed to isolate him, to make him doubt everything. But instead he moved with certainty, guided by the small, fearless figure beside him. Finally, Cale reached the center of the chamber. He placed the amulet on the floor, and its glow dimmed as he commanded it with his mind. The illusions faltered, walls returned to their true forms, and the whispers faded into silence. Selene's composure faltered for just a moment. You are stronger than I expected," she admitted, her voice calm but laced with frustration. Cale stepped closer, his presence commanding. "Strength is not just in power, but in trust, loyalty, and courage. And tonight, you underestimated both me and those who stand with me." Lyra exhaled quietly, her tension easing slightly. She had feared the trap would ensnare him, that Selene's cunning would succeed. Yet here he was, steady, unbroken, and aware of the danger in a way that few could ever achieve. Selene took a slow step back, her smile returning, faint but measured. "This is only the beginning, Alpha King," she said. "The threads are not fully revealed and the kingdom's shadows run deeper than you imagine." Cale's gaze hardened. "Then we will unravel them, one by one." Lyra looked at him, a mix of admiration and something unspoken stirring in her chest. The Alpha King was not just strong in body and authority. He was strong in spirit, willing to see the truth even when it was inconvenient, willing to trust when trust had been rare. And in that strength, she saw a possibility she had never dared to imagine. The chamber fell silent again, the only sound the distant rustle of the forest beyond the castle walls. Kale placed a hand lightly on Lyra's shoulder, a quiet acknowledgement of her guidance and bravery. She did not flinch, meeting his gaze with calm determination. Together they had faced the Luna's trap and emerged unbroken. Yet the night was far from over. Seleni's presence lingered, her plans not fully revealed, her power still potent. Kale knew that the true test had only begun. The bonds of trust between him and Lyra had strengthened, but the danger of the Luna's manipulations extended beyond this chamber, weaving through the corridors, the council, and even the kingdom itself. Kale and Lyra moved to a higher balcony, overlooking the castle gardens. The moonlight painted the trees in silver, the shadows long and mysterious. "We cannot be complacent," Kale said quietly. "Selene will act again. We must anticipate her and be ready for anything." Lyra nodded. "I will guide you as best I can, but you must trust yourself as well. Your instincts are sharper than you realize." He looked at her, and for a moment the weight of the crown seemed lighter. "I do trust you, Lyra, more than I expected." The wind stirred, rustling the leaves and carrying the faint scent of the night flowers. Somewhere in the distance, the howl of a wolf reminded them that the wild, untamed world beyond the castle walls was as unpredictable as the magic and ambition within. And as they stood together, the first real confrontation behind them, Kale felt a shift in himself, an understanding that strength was not just in ruling, but in trusting, in choosing allies wisely, and in seeing courage where others saw only insignificance. Selene's trap had tested him, but it had also revealed something unexpected, the bond forming between him and Lyra, a bond of respect, trust, and quiet, unspoken potential. The night stretched on, but neither spoke of love or longing yet. That was a quiet tension, simmering beneath the surface, waiting for its own moment. For now, they focused on the kingdom, on the danger, and on the next steps that would determine whether they could survive the Luna's schemes. And somewhere in the shadows, Selene watched, a faint smile playing on her lips. The trap had been revealed, but the threads were not all broken. The game continued, and the Alpha King and his unexpected Omega ally were only beginning to understand the depth of the challenge they faced. The castle was silent again, yet charged with anticipation. The night had shown them danger, and the bond they had forged would be tested in ways neither could yet imagine. The true battle, the battle of trust, courage, and survival, was only beginning. The kingdom of Vaelthar had never seen an eclipse like this before. The sky bled red and gold, a fiery halo surrounding the pale moon, casting the forests, cliffs, and castle in a surreal, haunting glow. The people whispered of omens, of long-forgotten prophecies, and of magic stirring in the shadows. In the castle, tension thrummed through every corridor, every chamber. Tonight, nothing would remain hidden. Kale stood on the highest balcony of the castle, his cloak brushing the stone floor. The crimson light bathed him, emphasizing the sharp strength of his features, the steady authority in his gaze. He held the amulet carefully in his hand, the one that Selene had used to manipulate perception. Its glow pulsed faintly, but he now understood its true power. It could bind the mind, yes, but it could also reveal the truth, if one had courage, focus, and a steadfast heart. Lyra approached quietly, her steps soundless against the stone. She had been with him through the shadows, through the traps and illusions, through fear and doubt. Now she stood beside him, not as a guide or an observer, but as an equal partner in the challenge to come. "The eclipse is beginning," she whispered, her voice steady despite the awe-inspiring spectacle above. "Magic is stronger tonight. Selene will make her move." Kale nodded. He did not need the warning. He had felt the shift, the subtle stir of threads in the castle's magic, the faint tug of Selene's presence even when she was unseen. He turned his gaze toward Lyra. "We face her together, then. No illusions, no traps, just truth and courage." Lyra met his eyes, her own determination shining. "Together," she agreed. The first sign of Seleni's plan appeared in the council chamber below. The walls shimmered as if made of liquid light, the floors bending and stretching subtly under the influence of her magic. Advisors moved in confusion, some frozen as though in a dream, others staring at invisible threats. The hall was a stage for deception, a place where even the strongest mind could falter. Kale stepped forward. "Focus," he instructed softly, placing a hand on Lyra's shoulder. "Ignore the illusions. See only what is real." Lyra nodded and followed him. Together, they descended the staircases through hidden corridors, moving quickly to intercept Selene before her magic could claim the minds of the council and destabilize the kingdom. Selene appeared at the center of the chamber, her presence commanding and serene. She raised her hands gracefully, and the illusions intensified. The walls appeared to stretch into infinity, shadows forming shapes that whispered secrets, lies, and threats. It was a test designed to overwhelm, to fracture confidence, to make even the Alpha King doubt himself. Kale felt the pull of the illusions but resisted. He focused on Lyra, on the steady truth of her presence, on the reality that Selene's tricks could not change. He concentrated on the amulet in his hand, using its faint magic to anchor his mind to reality. "You rely on her," Selene said smoothly, her voice echoing as if multiplied by the shadows. "An Omega guiding the king. How charming." Kale did not reply. His eyes narrowed, his mind clear. "I rely on truth, and you cannot bend truth with tricks or fear." Lyra moved beside him, her hand lightly brushing his sleeve. She whispered, "Stay focused. The magic is strong, but it cannot withstand courage." Step by step, they advanced, ignoring the shifting walls, the voices that tried to sow doubt. Advisors who had been frozen or confused looked up, noticing the king and the Omega moving together through the chaos. Slowly, they began to awaken, recognizing reality once more. Selene's control, subtle and powerful, began to falter. Selene's calm mask cracked slightly. "You are strong," she said, "but you cannot undo what has been set in motion." Kale paused, holding the amulet before her. "Perhaps not. But what you cannot break is loyalty, courage, and truth. And tonight that is enough." Lyra's eyes sparkled with determination. "Together, we are stronger than your magic, Selene." With a final movement, Kale focused all his will into the amulet. Its light expanded, a pure, steady glow that cut through the illusions. The walls returned to their true shape, the shadows vanished, and the whispers of false threats faded into silence. The council chamber was restored, the advisors blinking in surprise but safe. Selene stepped back, her smile fading. She had underestimated not only Kale but the Omega who had refused to be dismissed. The threads of her manipulation unraveled before her eyes. "This is not the end," she whispered, her voice low but filled with promise. "The kingdom is still mine to influence." Kale's gaze was steady, unyielding. "Not tonight. Tonight your schemes are broken, and from this moment the truth will guide the kingdom, not fear." Lyra felt a surge of relief and pride. Together, they had faced the Luna's most dangerous trap and emerged unbroken. She realized that this was more than victory. It was a bond formed in fire, trust, and courage. Kale had seen her, truly seen her, for the first time not as a rejected Omega, but as an equal, a partner in the fight for their kingdom. The eclipse reached its peak, the crimson glow bathing the castle in an eerie light. Kale and Lyra stepped onto the balcony overlooking the gardens. The wind stirred, rustling the leaves and carrying the scent of night-blooming flowers. The kingdom below was quiet, safe for now. Kale placed a hand lightly on Lyra's shoulder. "You were brave," he said softly. "Without you, I might not have seen the truth in time." Lyra looked at him, her heart steady despite the thrill of victory and the exhaustion of the night. "You saw it yourself, Kale, but perhaps I helped you notice it sooner." He smiled faintly, a rare warmth in his stormy expression. "Perhaps, but I also learned something else tonight." Lyra's eyes narrowed slightly, curious. "And what is that?" That courage, wisdom, and loyalty can come from the smallest voice, he said. Even one dismissed, even one rejected, can change the course of a kingdom. Lyra felt her cheeks warm at his words, but she kept her composure. She had long been invisible in the eyes of the court, but Cale's recognition mattered more than any praise she had ever sought. The night was still, the eclipse slowly waning, but a sense of calm settled over them. They had faced danger, deception, and magic, yet emerged stronger, wiser, and more united. The bond between them had deepened, built on respect, trust, and the shared experience of survival. Cale turned to look at the kingdom spread beneath the balcony. The forests, cliffs, and towers bathed in the pale light of the waning eclipse looked serene yet full of potential, as if the world itself held its breath. He realized that rulership was not just about power or strength, it was about understanding, trust, and knowing where to place faith. He glanced at Lyra. "There is more to the kingdom than what I have seen," he said. "More danger, yes, but also more hope. And now I know I will not face it alone." Lyra smiled faintly. "I will be with you, Cale, not because you command it, but because I choose to stand here." Their hands brushed lightly, a simple gesture, yet heavy with meaning. It was trust, partnership, and the unspoken promise that they would face what came together. The tension of the night, the fear, the uncertainty, it had brought them to this moment, quiet yet profound. In the shadows of the castle, Selene watched from a distance. Her plans had been foiled, yet her ambition was not diminished. The eclipse had passed, but the threads of intrigue still lingered. Cale and Lyra had won the night, yet the kingdom's future would require vigilance, courage, and the strength of the bond they had formed. Cale and Lyra remained on the balcony looking out over Vaelthar. The crimson glow had faded, replaced by the soft, silver twilight the kingdom was known for. The night was quiet, yet alive, filled with possibility. Cale exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of responsibility balanced by a new sense of hope. "Tonight we faced darkness," he said softly, "but we did so together. And that is how the kingdom will survive, from courage, wisdom, and trust, not fear." Lyra nodded, her eyes reflecting the silver light. "And together we will face whatever comes next." The wind stirred, carrying the scent of the night forests, the echo of distant wolves, and the promise of a future shaped not by deception or fear, but by those willing to see clearly, act bravely, and trust in one another. The kingdom of Vaelthar had faced a night of danger and magic, but it was no longer ruled by fear alone. Cale had learned the value of trust, Lyra had found her voice, and together they had forged a bond that could withstand even the most cunning of enemies. And somewhere beyond the shadows, the threads of future challenges waited, but Cale and Lyra stood ready. Side by side, Alpha and Omega, ruler and guide, they had turned the tide of fate. The eclipse passed, but its lesson remained. Courage and trust could illuminate even the darkest night.